A couple from Southampton are writing down some of their memories and thinking about getting them published. Everyone who's read Maurice Bennett's book, which I have here with me, so far is telling him he must get it published, and following in his footsteps is his wife Mollie, who's now thinking of writing her own thoughts down too. Luckily, Maurice and Mollie are both here to tell us more about it. Thank you so much for coming in and joining us. Now, Maurice, you've called this book My Life as Maurice Says.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to write it?
Well, basically, a couple of years back, I was thinking about my father. I never had a chance to ask him the questions I want to ask him now, because he's gone. And I thought, my kids are going to do the same. They're going to ask, what did Dad do then? Or why was Dad doing that? So I thought I'd start putting them on the paper. And then one thing leads to another. And I finished up writing my life from the first days I can remember, and up until I met this lovely lady here, became my wife.
And so, Mollie, you've been a big help in this, and I'm just going to hold it up because it is quite impressive. It's not a small tome, but you were quite helpful because you did all the typing it up, yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
That must have been quite some endeavour.
It certainly was, especially as Maurice is dyslexic. So it was like reading a foreign language.
I imagine you've heard it all before as well.
No.
Oh, you hadn't?
No.
Oh, it was news for you
Some
as
of
well.
it was a revelation to me, yeah.
That's incredible. You kept some of it back, Maurice.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of it actually that happened in my life I've bottled up, and it's still bottled up today. And quite frankly, that's where I shall leave it, because it caused me too much pain in the past. So.
Well, we won't go into that, but one of the things that you wanted to bring out was one of the things you wanted to bring out was so how different it was when you were young compared to how it is now.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that.
Well, we was all desperately poor before even the war started. The 30s, we had the recession and such like. The men were out of work. Then the war come along, that blew the family apart. The day that actually the war started. We had the Christmas prior to that, we was all together at the table, all 8 of us, big family. And that was the last time the family would ever reform again for the next 6 years. And when it did reform, it was not the same, because everybody had changed so much because of the war.
And you were about 7 when war was declared, and you say that you remember it.
Yes, we were listening to the radio. I couldn't understand what all the fuss was about listening to the radio. And then this gentleman come on and he said, therefore, Britain is now at war with Germany. With that, my mother started screaming, "Oh no, not again, not again!" And my dad was trying to calm her down. My mother was crying. The first time I seen my mother really crying, and that upset me. And she said, "You won't have to go, Fred." And he said, "Yes, I'll have to, because the young ones would want to know how to deal with things. I've got the experience." And there was a bit of a row in the family because of that.
Imagine, because your father had fought in the First World War, and now here he was saying, "I'm going to go off again."
Yes, he went off he joined the RAF. He said if there's another war, he'd go in the Navy, but he didn't make it. So yeah, that was basically what happened. And because we got evacuated, which was for some it was quite good, but for a lot of us it was a frightening experience.
So where were you growing up, and where did you get evacuated to?
Well, I've grown up in Bexley Heath, Welling, and was evacuated down to a place called Cowden. We didn't know what was happening. We just marched up to school. I had a label tied around my neck with a name and a number put on it and a colour cross on it, and I was bundled on the coach. Then I split up from my brother and my sisters, and we was taken down to this village. When we arrived at this village, we was all polled out again. There was hundreds of kids, seemed to be hundreds of kids to me. And we was just split up in groups, then marched up the street by this lady. I'm trying to be polite here. And she was saying, "You in there, you in there." And my brother, myself, my sister was dropped off to the house further down. My brother and myself was taken up to his house, where the woman stood at the door and shouted out, "I don't want them." And she replied, "You've got to take them, that's the law." And she said, we was pushed inside the gate, and she said, "You're not wanted and you're not welcome." And that was our first arrival.
Do you remember how you felt when you heard that? What an extraordinary thing to say to a child.
Well, we was frightened. we were showing up into the room. We'd been travelling since, what, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. We had no meal that day. No meal was offered. The following day, 8 o'clock, we was thrown out of the house and told if we wanted anything, we'd come back at 5 o'clock. So there was no midday lunch. So that was it. So we was out in the cold, and it was freezing. It was weather like it is today. It was absolutely freezing. And my sister was thrown out as well. Exactly the same situation. She had a little summer dress, and she was blue with the cold. I took her down this little country lane, and we climbed under some tree roots, and I put my coat in front of the tree roots to keep the draft off, and we sat there cuddling ourselves all day. This was our safe haven we sent to. So we eventually finished up being taken back home again, just in time for the Blitz. So.
I mean, that is just one extraordinary anecdote from what I imagine are dozens in your book. Because you went on, you joined the RAF, is that right? Yeah. And you were in a crash squad.
Aircraft crash rescue, yeah.
And Mollie, what are you going to tell? I mean, how is your story going to kind of live up to this? It seems extraordinary.
Well, mine's on a completely different level, shall we say, because I say brought up, and I use the term very, very loosely, in Blackburn, the Black Country up in the north. And it's, for me, a horror story. But I've never spoken about it to my children. I wanted my children to grow up with a normal life, with normal parents, in a normal home, including all the shouting and arguing and everything else that goes on. And I would tell them when they got married about my life. And that's what I'm doing.
When they got married, but they're married now.
They are grown
and you
up.
Haven't quite told them.
They had children, and I was then worried about the grandchildren. Could I do this? No, I couldn't. So now the grandchildren are all grown up. They're happy. They're well adjusted. That's all I asked for.
And are you going to give me a clue about some of the things that you're going to write about?
If I tell you it was, they called it the Black Country, Blackburn, because it didn't matter where you look. Everything was black and grim and just horrible, really. That's how I remember it. And permanently hungry. I don't recall ever seeing my father. My mother spent most of her life in the pub on the corner. Right. The only person I ever really remember, if you like, was my grandmother. And I think between her and my eldest brother, if it hadn't been for my eldest brother, we would probably never have made it. That situation went on until the Catholic Church got involved and we were taken away and we were put in Nazareth homes.
Wow.
And that's a horror story.
I mean, again, an incredible story. We're running out of time, and I did say that we would never get through all of the things that happened to either of you. But do you think it's important for people to write down things that have happened to them?
I absolutely do. I want my children to know when I left Nazareth House, I gave up God, I gave up religion, I didn't believe in any of it, not after what I'd just been through. However, I'll just say I did find God again in the strangest way. And I do believe there's a God now.
Well, Mollie, you'll have to come back when you've written a bit more of it down and we'll have to talk about it again if that's okay. But thank you both very much for coming in. It's been an extraordinary interview. I'm so pleased to have heard just those tiny, tiny fractions of the things that have happened to you. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.